Now, the exciting moment you've all been waiting for is axle rebuild. So we have the wheel supported. I do not take axles out of wheels that I don't have time to do that. But we take the bolt out, fairly simple. The lock plate comes out, 1.5 inches, brings that bolt out. They can be 500-600 pound-feet of torque, so they might be tight on you. Don't be surprised. If you're lucky, this bearing won't be too snug, and you can just take the sledgehammer and give a rap here, and it'll knock it loose like it did. If it's too tight, you can use a porta power or a bottle jack and go between the housing and the cast, and you just got to move it that inch to get this bearing to come free. And then we get that bearing out. Then we slide the housing off, and then we'll take the races out. It's pretty easy. With it off, these are kind of a pain because you have a very little area to try and snag it. So we're going to take the welder and just put a couple little spot welds inside that will suck that bearing race together. So this seal just keeps your oil from going out the end. Then you have a big seal, a big rubber seal. We'll show you when we go together. Rides here, and that keeps dirt and grime from coming in. So you have to grease this outer bearing. Most guys have a plug in there, and then you take the plug, you put a zerk in, and give it a greasing. So when we assemble, we'll end up running a 1/4 tube or a 1/2 tube of grease in there. So I'm gonna stand this down, stand it up, weld this one, flip it over, weld that one, knock this out, flip it over, knock that out, just like downtown. There you go.
Oh, that was embarrassing. Nope, that ain't gonna work. I can't get on it. I can't get on that side. It won't let me hook on that side. You rat bugger.
Just get an O-ring pick.
Yeah. Where's my cut? Is that enough to snag? I just put a weld bead there.
Yeah. I had to put a weld bead where the notch in the housing is supposed to be because the notch ain't there. Right here. And so, yeah.
Same thing. I'm trying to bring that cup. There's a cup and a bearing cup. I can't still. What I got? I don't know what I got going on. Oof. Normally we tip it to. There we got her to crack. Oh.
So you see how easy, that's why I never show stuff while me trying to work on something, because it just click, 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 so easy behind the camera. And I hate to make it always look so easy on camera, so that's why I do that. But you can see just a couple taps, then bearing cups almost just fall right out. So putting this seal on, I just use that piece of pipe. It's the diameter of the seal. Give it a couple hits to get a seal started. And then I use that big brass punch. That's big because then you can just hit all the way around and flush this seal up. And you should be good to go. Now, we did have a little problem. There's no damage to the axle that I can see. Everything looks good here. I can't feel any lip or anything. But the bearing was a little loose on the axle. So I'm not going to preheat this one in oil. In fact, I'm going to preheat this one with the torch a little bit to cook some of the oil off of that inner diameter and then get it installed. But I will be using some Loctite material as I install the bearing, and then that Loctite will help hold that race to that shaft. Because I do not want this race to be able to walk. And then when that's cooled and set, we'll see, did it maintain tightness? You know, we'll kind of feel it out and go from there. But that should do the trick. And then we'll get the housing when that's done and we're sure of to what's going on. Then we'll get that up there. If the axle is damaged here, you can send the axles out to the machine shop and they can get you undersized bearings. They can cut the axle, then you get an undersized bearing to go in here. Or you just go get another used axle. It's up to you. But yes, so let's get this done and then we'll get back with you. So I like how that bearing went on. With the Loctite, that bearing is on that shaft how it should be. So I like that. Then literally just slide the housing on. You've got your bearing and your brass come onto this side, then your planetary carrier. And the fun part is you got to try and get all three gears to mesh into your ring gear and then rotate that carrier to mesh into the axle. And so you could make a carrier that sticks into here, then it comes up 90 degrees. So you bend up 90 degrees, come up, bend up 90 degrees, and then put an eyelet here. And that will hold that carrier fairly level. Works pretty good. They're kind of heavy. You know, you got, I don't know, 50, 60 pounds here, pretty easy, that you're trying to hold and rotate and manipulate. And, you know, you can fatigue out pretty quick. It gets frustrating pretty quick. Sometimes they literally just fall in. You get it started into the ring gear and you just roll a little bit and dunk, it's in place. Other times you will get tired of holding that thing. You don't need to worry about Loctite on the bolt because you have that star washer and you have your sun gear here. So with the sun gear, the bolt can't fall out and come into the system. That sun gear, this plate goes two ways. If it doesn't go on the bolt this way, it doesn't matter how many, in all three positions it's the same. But if you flip it over, it changes the orientation a little bit. So change it that way, don't change it that way. So if you have the tech manual, you can do the lead ball method. You go to your fishing box, get some sinkers and you heavy grease, stick them to the end of the axle, put the planetary on, torque it up, roll it, take the planetary off, measure them lead sinkers for their thickness, and that's how much shims you use, and then put it back together. I don't like that. That's a lot of extra work and time. I like to just use no shims, torque it up so it's good and tight, to where it's almost difficult to turn, to where you can stick a bolt in here and take a pry bar and roll that thing over 5 or 10 times each direction. You want it that hard. And that helps set them bearings. Then you back off on the bolt. You back off that bolt, maybe go a half a turn. And take a maul and give some good whacks here. 2, 3, 4 good whacks. And then roll it over. Did it loosen up? Did it loosen up enough? If not, then go another half a turn, give some good whacks, and you'll know it. If you're hitting this hard enough to be bringing that bearing pack out to add some relief, that bolt should not be finger tight anymore. And you keep backing off until you get 10 to 20 pounds of torque. So if you put a bar across here to here and put a torque wrench in the middle, should be 10 to 20 pounds of torque to roll it over. And I like that. I like that. So, and then when you get that desired goal, then put that lock plate on the end. I'm going to take these out and put a grease zerk in, because we're going to put about 1/4 to 1/2 a tube in each one. And then I will get some string. The trick is, let me just get a piece of string and I'll show you quick. All right, so when you go back together, I put this little piece of string here. This is one of Dad's old tricks. Put this piece of string here, and that's funny how fast that steel can rust after a good hot water bath. And that will keep this disc and this plate from falling backwards. Some tractors, the gears are raised back here. Some aren't, so depending on what you've got going on. But the string just holds everything in place. And then, so I'll take the jack and I'll kind of tip that transmission on that transmission stand to match the axle. You can get some long bolts or a long bolt to come out, cut the head off and taper it. So as you're coming up, it will help. But sometimes that can, in this case, our differential's open, so we can move things by hand. If the tractor's together, I don't know if I would use an alignment bolt, because then if it comes out too far, it will stop you from being able to rock the housing to spin the shaft to get into, for these splines to line up inside the differential. But in this case, it doesn't matter, because we can just grab the differential by hand. So yeah, but at this point, I have nothing to say other than patience, and make sure that you're very square to your faces. Get it up close and then look at it. Is your gap square, or does the gap kind of taper one way or the other? And then from side to side, get as square as you can. As square as you can. And then bring it home. There is no pulling it in with bolts. You 100% by hand, other than your cart isn't rolling on the concrete, can get this final drive to these dowels with a push. Yeah. Yep. So that's it. That is it. That axle is rebuilt, ready to go. Still got to do the grease zerk yet. Still got to do our differential line. Button up some little stuff, and then get the other axle on and get that PTO in. And then the next step, I think, will be that clutch housing right there, the clutch housing in the John Deere high-low. And we might save you a lot of money there. We're going to save you a lot of money on that high-low unit, because the aftermarket companies, they're charging $4,000 and $5,000 for reconditioned units like that. We can show you how to rebuild that, and then you can get your own back to new again. And so, yeah, I hope at this point someday somebody watches these videos and says, hey, you actually helped me save a lot of money. And so I hope these are helping. Someday they'll be helping. And then we still got the control valve, the 3-point control valve housing to go through. Oh man, we got a lot of work left. Parts are showing up for the cab and for the tractor. Geez, what did we get into? So there we look like I put some long guides in because I'm trying to get the transmission rocked at that angle. It's different if you got the cab on and the tractor, the other tires, the other wheel is on, and you got jacks under it. It's a whole lot different than being like this. So you can see we're coming in at a weird angle. So it's just so easy to put bolts in, and one hand up here and one hand on the transmission case. Start pulling together, transmission's in neutral. Start rolling that and you'll feel it, boom, and it comes in, and I'm already on this dowel a little bit. And so I'm just, as it came in, it turned a little bit, but that's all right. At this point, I can put the bolts in and just start running them up and sucking her together. And then also at this point, I can pull my string out and everything will be in place. So that worked really good. That works really good. I like that. I know another old timer trick was to I bumped it just to get my rope out. Another old timer trick was to take that sun gear, and on the back side, if they didn't have it, put a little spot of brass around the back side. But that piece of string just is so much nicer. So we'll get that one bolted up. Then we'll get the picker out from underneath this one and start working on that side. Well, there we go. One thing I forgot to show in my rigging is I put a turnbuckle here, or a chain breaker, and that can change the load, the pitch of the wheel. A 2-inch ratchet strap works well, whatever. But there we go. It's on. Now I just got to jack this side up and get my cherry picker out. Yeah, easy peasy, lemon squeezy. So I just use that ratchet to bring the bolts up snug enough to get unhooked from it. If you need more than that ratchet to draw this together, you're not right. You're not square. Something's not lined up. But there's a lot of mesh. You're going to know pretty early on. But yeah, so that's that. And guys, thanks for watching. I have no clue what's next.